As I said in my recent video about the Xbox, we've got a new generation of consoles rapidly approaching, and that might make you question whether buying a console right now is a good idea. I think it might be though, and if you're in the market for a new console, you could do a lot worse than going with the PlayStation 4, and here's why. First off, it's the most popular console currently out there. And that might seem like a fatuous statement. Well, who wants to buy a console just because it's popular? But if you think about it for a minute, if you're playing online games, especially if there's a large player base out there for you to play with, that's definitely a plus point. And, don't get me wrong, the Xbox isn't a slouch in that area and you don't usually have a problem trying to find people to play with. But the PlayStation is definitely the console with the biggest player base. So it's worth taking that into consideration. And especially if your friends have a PlayStation 4, which, let's be honest, it's likely that they might have a PlayStation 4. The other thing is it's got a very clean front end. It's very clean, it's very functional. For me, it could be considered a little bit sterile, actually. But it does work very well, and it does get you to where you want to go very quickly. So especially for, I would say if you're a beginner, if you're not somebody who's used to using consoles or you haven't used a console for a while, the PlayStation front end might be a little bit easier to navigate than the Xbox is, and a little bit less intimidating as a result. It also doesn't suffer with the slowdown in the store like you get with the Xbox at times. Though it has to be said, games do tend to download quicker on the Xbox as a general rule. The other thing, and this one is one I have to be careful with because I don't want to shout this one too loudly, but we are hearing that the PlayStation 5 is finally going to be getting backwards compatibility. So if we are to believe the reports, that's really good news. And there's even reports that we could be getting full compatibility with the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation 3. Though, if I'm being honest again, I find that hard to believe, just because the issue of licensing. Older games often are hard to find out who owns the license, who the license holders are. We've seen this with Xbox with backwards compatibility. Some of the reason why, there's not as many games as some people would like, although there's already a large library of backwards compatible games. Some of those games, they just can't track down the license holder, or there's problems with a license holder, or somebody doesn't want to give up the license. So the idea that we'll be getting all of PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3 games is kind of pie in the sky. Nevertheless, it will be good if they do deliver at least a large number of those games. And we'll certainly be seeing, I would imagine, we will be seeing virtually the entirety of the PlayStation 4 catalogue. And I would also suspect that they're going to look better on the newer console as well. We've already seen this with the Xbox One X playing 360 games. And if you look at something like Red Dead Redemption, that looks better on the X than it does on the 360 because of the work that's been done. And I can imagine that PlayStation are going to be doing that. And there have been rumours going around, and there was some leaks of some patents as well. So it does look like we're going to be getting PlayStation 4 backwards compatibility and also possibly some PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3. And whether that's a selling point for you will maybe depend on whether you've got PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3 games. But it is interesting and it is something to bear in mind. And, hold it and don't necessarily use that as an excuse to buy a console because we haven't got that yet. But moving forward, especially with your PlayStation 4 games, I would bet that PlayStation 4 games are going to be available to play on the PlayStation 5. And that means that any games you buy for the PlayStation 4 now will be ready for you to play on the day of release of the PlayStation 5. And as I say, that's not guaranteed at this stage, but I bet money on it. As I say, though, it is a rumour, and while it is a strong rumour, don't blame me if it turns out not to be the case. But even without the possibility of backwards compatibility, the PlayStation 4 is currently a fantastic proposition. It's got a fantastic library of games. And arguably, I don't even think it's arguable, it's got the best first-party lineup of this generation. I think most people would agree, even most Xbox fans would agree, the fanboys maybe not, but even most Xbox fans would agree that the PlayStation 4 has got the best selection of first-party games. You know, the games that kind of sell the console. So if you bought a PlayStation 4 now and only played the games up until the launch of the PlayStation 5, you'd still have a vast library of fantastic games to while away your time until next year's releases. Games like God of War, Spider-Man, Horizon Zero Dawn, The Last of Us, Uncharted, and on and on. So many great games. And if you are a gamer, you'll want to play those games. At some point, I would suggest you'll want to play those games because they are worth playing. All of them. And as I say, there are more. And the games look great on the system, especially on the PlayStation 4. You know, the third-party games don't tend to look quite as good on the Pro as they do on the Xbox One X, but they're still pretty impressive. And I defy anybody to tell me that Sony's first-party titles don't look utterly stunning. And when you factor in that a lot of these games have been out for a while and can be picked up fairly cheaply in many cases, it becomes a fairly easy choice to buy a PS4. Well, that's what I think anyway. You know, even PlayStation Now has improved markedly recently with a significant price drop and many of the games being available to download as well as streaming. And I actually think that's a really good move by Sony, and it makes PlayStation Now a much more competitive and attractive proposition. With the subscription costing as little as 49 quid a year, you could buy a PlayStation 4, buy a subscription to PlayStation Now, and not need to buy a game at full price for months, possibly years, if you're not going into the next generation. I mean, you could buy a PlayStation 4 now and decide not even to bother with the PlayStation 5 for a year. You'd still have loads of games to play. You know, if you're not the sort of person who wants to have the next greatest game the day it comes out, then you've got years of games that you could be playing. And, you know, honestly, if I was looking to buy a PlayStation 4 now, that's what I'd do. I'd buy a PlayStation 4 and I'd buy a subscription to PlayStation Now and, you know, I'd start there. You can always, you know, stop with PlayStation Now. It's not like you're signed up for life. The reality is that the PlayStation 4 is a solid system and everything about it, well, just works. Well, apart from those stupidly small power and eject buttons on the Pro and Slim. But, you know, everything's got something wrong with it. And if that's the only thing you can find, then you're doing okay. And, you know, the controller's very solid as well. And I know some people don't like the light bars and the way that they can drain the battery. But again, that's a minor quibble. Sony have been refining the DualShock for years now, and it shows. The controller's comfortable, it's robust, it does its job. Basically, it works really, really well. And, you know, some people prefer the Xbox controller design, but at the end of the day, it's pretty subjective and it comes down to the size of your hands and the shape of your hands and also what you've got used to. And even for someone like me, who, you know, and I've stated on many occasions that I favour the Xbox controller. But even, as I say, even for me, the DualShock 4 is still comfortable, and after a short while of play, I can happily adjust to either controller. They're both very good, and I can't imagine many people would be disappointed with the DualShock 4. Believe me, I've used enough terrible controllers over the years to recognise when one is good, and the DualShock 4 is very good. But let's assume I've convinced you to buy a PlayStation 4. Which one should you go for? As with the Xbox, there are choices to be made. We've got the PlayStation 4 Slim and we've got the PlayStation 4 Pro. And personally, I'd go for the Pro, especially if you've got a 4K television. The PlayStation Pro may employ checkerboard rendering and other methods to trick the eye rather than employing brute force power. But as I said before, games like Horizon Zero Dawn, Spider-Man, God of War, they all look utterly gorgeous on the PlayStation Pro. And if you're on a budget, the PlayStation 4 Slim is also a decent buy. And it does have the advantage over the Xbox One S in that it is slightly more powerful. So if you're on a budget, that is probably the best budget console to go for. I still think the PlayStation 4 Pro is the one to go for, though. You can pick it up for around about $299 and you'll get a 1TB hard drive for that. Or I actually saw the white PlayStation 4 Pro for $279 as well. So you can, if you shop around, you can pick it up cheap. The Slim is currently going for around about $199 with a 500GB hard drive, or $249 with a 1TB drive. So if you're looking at the 1TB version, that's only 50 quid less than the PS4 Pro. So as I say, I would go for the Pro. But if you want to save that 50 quid and maybe buy it on a game, or even if you just want to go for 500 gig, I think they're all decent deals. And, whichever one you go for, I don't think you would be disappointed. The PlayStation 4 is a great console, and I wouldn't, let anybody say otherwise, to be honest. As with all consoles and indeed all products, though, there are downsides. And I've already mentioned those stupid bloody on and off buttons and the stupid eject button. But, they're not a deal breaker, even if they were designed by someone who was nursing a hangover. Of course, if you do want the absolute best in terms of graphical grunt from your multi-platform games, then the Xbox One X is the console you should look at, unless you want to go really for the high end, and then you're looking at PCs, but that's another argument. And, again, as with the Xbox, we do have new consoles on the horizon. We're still a year away, though, and, if you're in the market for a console right now, there's not many other reasons not to invest. You might be looking at these consoles coming along, but as I say, it is a year away, and you could ignore them when they release and buy them a year later. The PlayStation 4 is not going to suddenly become completely obsolete on the day of the release of the new consoles. It'll still be a good console some years down the line. So you could be waiting and twiddling your thumbs, or you could be playing God of War. And personally, I know what I'd choose. I'd be playing God of War, or Horizon Zero Dawn, or Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's one of my favourite games of this generation. So you could be having a lot of fun, or you could be waiting and looking and going, well, there's new consoles coming. There's always something new and better coming along, but these consoles are here now, and the PlayStation is worth playing, and those games are still going to be worth playing. But anyway, look, that's what I think. I really do think that it's worth investing in a PlayStation 4 now, and particularly in the PlayStation 4 Pro. But if you disagree, if you think that I'm talking rubbish, you know the drill. Let me know in the comments. And if you like this one, give it a thumbs up and all the usual stuff. Subscribe and hit the little bell and all the rest of it. And now I'm going to go and grab myself a cup of tea. So I'm going to grab a cup of tea, drink that, and then I'm going to hit the hay because it's late and I need to go to bed. So I'm going to do that, and I will speak to you guys in the next one. Bye.